For the first time in my life, I had money. And it wasn't the kind of money you could buy a restaurant or two a month with. No, it was cold, hard-earned cash. You see, it was the type of funds that could allow me to buy a home for my children and myself. Since their mom left us, I had been left alone to take care of them. My family helps a lot, but as a single dad, it was hard to take care of them. I jumped from job to job trying to find one that would at least allow us to move us from our cramped apartment. And I finally found it. All it took was about a year of my life, some hard studying, and I got it. Being a car salesman doesn't have a big shiny gloss to it, but it paid the bills well. And plus, I ended up getting a job selling Mercedes, which means the commissions were great. Anyway, this isn't a sob story about how I lost my wife and found my career. Instead, this is the story of the first house I managed to buy for my kids and me. Now, after working crazy hours and putting a lot of money aside, I was accepted for a loan and managed to buy a beautiful, cozy little beach house. It ate up all of my savings, but there were too many advantages for me not to take the risk. My 3 sons would have a room for themselves, plus they would have access to the beach every day if they wanted. The homeowners and flood insurances were incredibly high, but I thought it was worth it. Now, we moved in as soon as we could. When I woke up the next day and saw the sun rising on the ocean, well, I thought I had just made the best decision of my life. And I knew my wife would have loved this place. She always loved swimming, always loved the sea. Her dreams were to buy a house near the water so she could go diving whenever she wanted to. It wasn't my dream, but with the kids growing up and her gone, I wanted it. Plus, I already took all the diving classes. My wife was big on travel. We went to New Zealand, Costa Rica, and several other fantastic diving locations, so I had to take the class to dive with her. I liked it when I did it with her, and now I had a beach house. I thought about giving it a shot again. Who knows, I might even get the kids into it. It would be a good memento mori for Lynn. Unfortunately, I sold her diving gear a long time ago. It was a troubling period with financial difficulties, so I had to get rid of a lot of stuff to make ends meet. I didn't only sell her stuff though. I sold a lot of my things as well. And, well, some of the kids. Listen, it's not something I'm proud of, but it helped us survive. Now, don't get me wrong, diving gear is expensive, and I just bought a beach house. It wasn't an expense I could justify, so I asked my parents for help. When I told them why, they thought it was a great idea and insisted on buying me the best equipment. Within a month, I had a custom-tailored diving suit and enough tanks to dive at least once a week for the next 6 months without worry. This most likely cost them an arm and a leg, so I made sure to thank them profusely. 5 days later, I was ready for my first deep dive exploration of my portion of the beach. It was still mid-June, so the water was relatively cold. It didn't stop the kids from swimming every day since we moved, but they're made of sturdier material than I am. I sent them to spend the week with their auntie, so I'd have a lot of free time to do stuff around the new house, and of course, have some fun diving. I put on my new suit and was surprised at how well it fit, and I guess that's why people pay more for custom wetsuits. I made my way to the beach, used my swim fins to get out from the water, and I made my way into the sea. I felt every hair on my body stand on end. The water was so cold I nearly wanted to swim back. Fortunately, with a few quick movements, I managed to shake off the cold. The wetsuit was terrific. I could barely feel the cold. Only my face and the few exposed parts felt the temperature. I'd be fine as long as I didn't spend half a day underwater. If I remember correctly, I still had a couple of hours of mix in the tanks, which gave me more than enough time to explore my surroundings. I started by swimming around the beach. Not too deep, just to test my equipment. So far, so good, and with the confidence that I had the right gear, I decided to venture further and deeper. Now, on my first exploration, I saw a lot of colorful fish, some beautiful coral and crabs. I swam for a while, took my time to explore the area. It was an excellent place to teach the kids how to dive. Nothing too fancy to see, but if they liked it, then we could all go on a family trip somewhere nice. I was swimming back towards where I came from when I noticed something in my peripheral vision. There was a hole at the bottom of the seafloor, and a strange red light, about 10 or 20 feet deep inside that hole. It glowed faintly, but it was there. I swam near the edge of the hole for a good 5 minutes, wondering what the hell that light was. Unfortunately, since I'd been out for a long time, I knew that I needed to get back to shore. I wasn't too far from home though, so I could come back the next day and explore it. The kids still wouldn't be back, and before I teach them how to dive, I wanted to make sure this wasn't something dangerous. And if lights intrigued me, then I'm sure it would intrigue them, and I'd prefer not to put my kids in unnecessary danger. It's a shame I couldn't see in the darkness of the hole. I took a mental note to buy an underwater lamp, because there was no way I was venturing into a dark hole at the bottom of the sea without one. The purchase of one was a little bit more expensive than I expected, but that was okay. I stopped at a local diving store on my way back from work and got a good one, as well as a set of those big batteries to make sure it doesn't give up on me while I was diving. It didn't take long for me to eat a quick dinner and make my way back into the sea. I still had a few hours of sunlight and wanted to use them to their fullest. I still brought the lamp with me because I knew there wasn't any sun in the hole. But hey, at least finding my way back to the surface wouldn't be too much trouble. It took about 20 minutes to get back to that hole, and lo and behold, the light was still there, shining ever so faintly in the darkness. I took a deep breath, feeling my excitement rise. I felt like some deep-sea explorer about to find an abandoned old ship. The light fascinated me in the sense that it didn't make sense for light to function underwater like that, and the fact that it hadn't moved confirmed it wasn't a fish or something living. I turned on my lamp and slowly started swimming toward the light in the darkness. And I wish I could say the lamp helped, but the water was so dense down there that I couldn't see more than a foot or two in front of me, even with that powerful lamp. The water was also getting a lot colder as I made my descent into the abyss, but the red light grew brighter as well. I felt something rub against my leg and assumed a big fish or eel-like creature, but when I turned around with my lamp, it was already gone. I was not necessarily scared, but it did shock me a little bit. Maybe a bit apprehensive, but mostly thrilled. I swallowed thickly as I made my way toward the red light, and when I reached it, my eyes widened up in disbelief. It was a door, carved right into the wall of the trench, and the light stood atop of it, glowing as if trying to tell someone it was there. There wasn't a handle either, but I figured out opening this door would be impossible, with the water pressure at all. Unless it's a push type of door, but even then. And yet, my curiosity got the best of me, and so I tried to push it, like an idiot, and it didn't budge. At least not for the first few seconds. And then, even though the noise caused by the bubbles my diver's mask was releasing, I heard it, a long, deep, iron screech as the mechanism behind the doors started moving. I didn't remember pressing a button or a switch or anything like that. I just put one of my palms on the door and tried to push, but it seems it was all that was needed to activate it. Now at this point, smart people turn back, You see, intelligent people would understand that a door in the middle of a trench in a dark hole in the ocean is never a good sign. And I pride myself thinking I am a smart person, since I know when or what to scream at, like dumb people in horror movies. However, it seemed that I threw all of my common sense out the window in favor of unyielding curiosity. And then there I was. The door opened, and I was vacuum sucked inside with the water around me. I slammed into another door so hard, I broke my brand new lamp and cracked my diving mask. But at least they weren't cracked through, so the water didn't get inside. But to say that my vision was divided by the cracks was an understatement. I could only see with the left eye, as the right, the point of impact, was covered in a lot of fractures and made seeing highly impossible. Soon the water started draining and I heard the sound of the door closing behind me. Within a couple of minutes, I was standing between the two doors, wetsuit dripping and eyes locked on that second door. I pushed it like I pushed the first, and within a couple of seconds, it activated and opened for me. Now, you see, I wish that I had my lamp. I stared at the debris and, I tried to put it back together, but I knew it was a lost cause. But in front of me was a very dark hallway carved into the ocean floor. Behind me was a door leading back to safety. I chose to go toward the unknown. I took off my half-broken diving mask and wrapped the band tight around my wrist for later. However, I kept my diving tanks on just in case this place didn't have breathable air. The warm breeze that washed over me when the door opened smelled stale, rotten even, like there was something in there that died a while back. I reached to the nearest wall and walked down this corridor following it. Within a couple of minutes, I felt the ground vibrate like a small earthquake was shaking it. I didn't think much of it, but it did send unpleasant tingles at the bottom of my spine. My head was screaming at me to turn back, but I just couldn't. I was fascinated, and I continued walking until there wasn't a wall to follow with my hand. And I had to choose between turning back or going left. I went left, and a strange, breezing sound echoed throughout this cave. I kept walking until I nearly fell, but managed to catch myself in time. There was a pit ahead of me, and there was something in the hole. I couldn't see without my flashlight, but I heard it squish around. I listened to the slimy sound of tendrils rubbing against one another, and the breezy sound was breathing. I heard splashing and quivered as I felt something was watching me. At the bottom of the pit stood a creature I couldn't identify if I wanted to, because I'd never seen it on Animal Planet or any book that talks about animals, but through the darkness, I could barely make out its form, and it was nothing short of nightmarish. Its massive body looked as pliable and soft as would the head of an octopus, but the tendrils looked nothing like regular tentacles. There were far too many to even think of them as tentacles. It was almost like thick hair strands growing out of the body of the creature. They just kept squirming in the air as if trying to reach for me. I saw them sway in my direction, too short of making contact with me. And I thought about when I first swam towards this cave and felt something brush against my thigh. And thinking about it, I couldn't see the bottom of this pit either. What if the creature had access to the inside of the trench near the red light? What if it fed upon whatever was attracted to that red light? It was a terrifying thought. But the scariest thing was that I felt its anger towards me, as if it were expecting me to fall so that it could devour me. I didn't see any eyes on this abomination. Don't forget it was dark, and I didn't see any eyes on this abomination. And yet, I felt like it was focused on me, like it could sense me. The same way a cat would on a fly if it flew too close to its face. The ground started shaking and a strong breeze nearly shoved me in the pit. If I hadn't been holding on to the rocky wall, I would have been pushed towards this creature. A long, high-pitched vibrating noise soon reverberated in the atmosphere, and a drone flew down from the ceiling and stared at me. This told me everything I needed to know. That humans managed this place, but whatever it was that lived at the bottom wasn't up to anything good. As I realized it, I turned around and dashed towards where I came from. The ground quaked beneath my flippers and I ran as fast as I possibly could with them on. And let me tell you, it was rather difficult, but I didn't care. I fell on my face as I ran away and stood up as fast as I could. When I reached the door, I slammed both fists on it and prayed it would open quickly. The earthquake was getting stronger, and this high-pitched sound I heard was becoming louder and louder. I wouldn't be able to tell you whether it was the beast's screams or some machinery, but I didn't want to know anymore. All I wanted was to escape this place in one piece. The door opened, and I slammed into the other one, glad I was vacuumed out of the cave. As I swam back, I once more felt something brush against my thigh. This time, however, it didn't only happen once. I felt multiple squirmy tendrils touch me, and one wrapped around my ankle. It tried to pull me back down, and its grip was so intense, I felt the bones of my foot and leg break under the pressure. I couldn't scream or fight back, and I thought I would be dragged to the bottom. I bent to my other leg and grabbed my diver's knife and plunged it into it, then swam towards the light as fast as I could. Now it took me about 30 minutes to return to shore. My ankles at this point were purple, a swollen mess, and I told the doctor at the local clinic that a pile of cinder blocks fell on my leg because I couldn't see myself explaining that a weird creature's tendrils broke my ankle and leg bones. I decided not to teach my kids how to dive, at least until I sold the house and moved away from that beach. I don't feel safe here anymore, and it's not just because of the creature. It was because I spotted some drones checking out my house.